Lucky you!
Best 36 holes in golf.
You tuned in to Alternate Shots Podcast,
Arnie's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Barkeys, Sandy's,
poker,
Bond, James Bond.
horse racing,
I'm all in.
great movies.
Alfred Hitchcock.
We have no script.
And down the stretch they come.
We're glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Whoop. Let's start again.
I'm sorry, but James Bond can't be a girl. 007 can't be a girl.
Thank you. 008 can be a girl.
Yeah, but 007, that's James Bond, that's a man, it's only going to be a man.
Nothing like the match that Sean Connery and Bert Frobe had at in Goldfinger, where Bond misses a short putt at the end, and then it's like strict rules of golf. You played the wrong ball.
First encounter was at the Fontainebleau Hotel. This
Correct.
is what I like about this, the journey that you go through. We've gone from Miami Beach. That's where we start this.
Yeah. Yes, and where he interrupts Goldfinger's cheating gin game. Goldfinger has the headset on, and Shirley Eaton, I believe it was upstairs. He just picked up the Jack of Diamonds. That's the Four of Diamonds now, giving Goldfinger the look. And it always, I was always like, this is a guy that's got all kinds of gold. He flies all over the world. He owns clubs, and he's cheating at gin. They were playing 10 cents a point, I think, and it was, Bond gets on the headset and says, let's say you lose 10,000. Let's be generous. Make it 20 or something like that. So.
Good technology back in 1964. They had that two-way radio where she was on the penthouse floor out in the balcony.
Yeah.
With the lens looking right down on his hand, right?
Yeah.
She had the little thing in her ear.
Yeah. And Sean Connery hits the mic. Back. He's like, whoa. As James Bond always did to his nemesis, is he agitated the hell out of them. He didn't really sneak up on them. He burst on them and gave them, broke their chops as much as he could on every level, whether it was at the baccarat table or the roulette wheel or wherever it was. He let them know, I'm here and I win these games, which is the greatest thing about James Bond is he always wins.
But you have to remember that opening scene in Dr. No, when he's at the first time you see James Bond ever.
Yep.
And he has this unfiltered cigarette, and he takes the gold lighter and lights it. And everything he did was cool.
Carte. 9 à la banque.
I need another 1,000.
I admire your courage, Miss...
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Mr. Bond, I suppose you wouldn't care to, raise the limit?
I have no objection.
Yep. Bond. James Bond.
So
So he shows up to play golf with Goldfinger, and at one point he drops a gold bar on one of the greens or tees, which catches Goldfinger's
right on the green. It
attention.
was on the green, right there on the first green. What are we going to play for? And drops the bar.
Yeah. I hope he had a divot repair thing. Yeah, so they play for that, and Bond catches them cheating. Odd Job drops the ball out of his pants. It's over here. And Bond's caddy says something like, I don't think that's his ball. And Bond's like, it's not his ball. How do you know that, sir? Because I'm standing on it. So he switches balls, strict rules of golf, and he ends up, winning and agitating Goldfinger even more to the point where Odd Job cuts the statue's head off.
But I see that it is necessary to remind you. Odd Job, Many people have tried to involve themselves in my affairs, unsuccessfully.
Remarkable. But what does the club secretary have to say?
Oh, nothing, Mr. Bond. I own the club.
But that's where that was their second encounter with each other. And Goldfinger even says, this is the second time you've monkeyed with me. I should think the first time would have taught you a lesson. Because
Jill?
the first time he ends up painting Shirley Eaton gold. She suffocates her by painting her in gold.
Yeah. And
I remember I was young. I was like, wow, this is kind of yikes. Painting somebody head to toe.
Yeah, it was a little racy too because she had no clothes on.
Yep. And Bonds were always a little racy.
Right.
They never went too far, but they were always knocking on the door.
There are never any bad-looking Bond girls. I can say that.
And Q, of those, Q was the standout because, he'd go down to see all the new equipment. He'd start messing with stuff, blowing things up, and Q would always be like, "Don't touch that, don't push that button."
What was your first or the first recollection of a gadget that you can't forget about that he created in James Bond?
The ejector seat.
Absolutely, the red button.
Yeah. In fact, there were Corgi toys. I don't know if you remember them when we were kids. They were heavy metal cars and trucks, and they actually had suspension. They were expensive. You tried to collect them. And after Goldfinger, they came out with the Aston Martin, and you could actually put the shield up in the back or release the machine guns out the front, or hit the ejector seat, and the roof would fly open, and a little guy would shoot out. They weren't that ridiculous. I mean, remember he had the tricky attaché case where if you push the buttons one way, gas would come out.
It came in handy in Russia with Love.
The products that they sold as a result of these films was, when you're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, you're gobbling that stuff up.
The other one I like, and it was in Russia with Love, is Rosa Klebb. Remember the beginning of the movie? Yeah, she had the knife that came out of kind of like her big toe, and that knife was nothing to mess with. That was worse than a rattlesnake.
Yep, go around trying to kick everybody. The original movies, really kind of set a high bar. And then it kind of, I think they went into neutral through Roger Moore and some of the others. Pierce Bronson, they were okay. The technology and the jumping around. And there's one scene where he's chasing the bad guy.
Yep.
And he's on a motorcycle. He's riding over rooftops. This is James Bond chasing the bad guy, and he's got a headset on.
Yeah.
And M is kind of kibitzing.
Right.
And I'm like, leave the guy alone. It's James Bond. He's 150,000 and 0 in these situations,
What's the toughest predicament that he got himself out of?
Oh, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. That one I thought was a tough one, where he's strapped down with the laser beam going up the middle with.
You took it right out of my head.
The purpose of our two previous encounters is now very clear to me. I do not intend to be distracted by another. Good night, Mr. Bond.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
It was Thunderball when he was in that stretching machine and the attractive physical therapist left him, and then the bad guy came in and turned it up.
Turns it all the way up.
He's about 3 inches taller after that one, right?
and then he goes and sticks the guy in. The guy's in the steam. You know, the guy who turned it up should have, you know, taken some precautions. Well, that was Bond. You know, that was the unspoken part of James Bond. He's a ladies' man. They loved him. He loved.
Now he did like a lot of them. I mean,
right. So if you don't like that, you make a different movie with a different character that isn't like that. But you don't have to decide, oh, you know, we don't want James Bond to be that character anymore. That's crazy. There was no machine ever invented by man, new or old, that James Bond couldn't operate.
Right.
He figured them out in a minute.
Bridge is that way! You're not thinking.
I sure am, boy. Ever heard of Evel Knievel?
I've never done that before.
Oh, neither have I, actually.
A Russian tank, he figured out, right?
Yeah. But that's the greatest thing about him. It screamed fiction.
This little place that was beautiful, backed up to the beach, and he wrote on the old-fashioned manual typewriter all these little stories. Incredible. He created this character that's Batman.
And not just the character, then you have the villains, Blofeld or Goldfinger or Vargas in Thunderball. What was his name? Vargas? Or maybe that was the henchman.
Ernst Stavros Blofeld.
Remove his helmet. James Bond, allow me to introduce myself. I am Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
But the same thing came up in Diamonds Are Forever, right?
With the two guys,
The two guys that every time they met somebody from the school teacher in Antwerp, right? She got it.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. What was she saying? Unless it rained, and then she's in the river face down and...
Mr. Wint?
Kid, Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd.
Mr. Kidd, yeah. You have to have faith in your audience, in your viewing audience. And you know, unfortunately, some movies, and a lot of the old movies too, they hit you right over the head with everything. Like Robin Hood, as much as I love Errol Flynn as Robin Hood, how many times do they say, we're meeting tonight in Sherwood Forest, meeting tonight in Sherwood Forest, meeting tonight in Sherwood Forest. It's like 40 times. We get it. You could have said it like twice. As always happens, the need will arise. Somebody will see it like, let's make a great James Bond movie. And then they'll come up with maybe with somebody you've never heard of, who knows. But they hit the nail on the head as far as sticking with the character, the capability of the character, the flying around. You get to see the world, you get to see the gadgets, you get to see him flying, you know, jumping around and chasing people up buildings and down girders. And, you know, it was entertainment top to bottom. No statements. I kind of liked Ursula Andress. And she was married to John Derek.
Yep.
Who then ended up marrying Bo Derek.
Oh, wait, he married her and Bo Derek?
Yeah.
What a quadella.
Yeah. There might have been, and Linda Evans as well.
Oh, my God.
So, yeah, he kind of had
he had a type.
Make hula hoops underneath the mango tree. Make hula hoops soon. La da da dee da da dee, honey and me.
Underneath the mango tree, my honey and me.
Who's that?
Blonde, but Ursula Andress is my favorite.
His voice, the way he talked, you know, very enjoyable character. No, you're on trains going all over the world. You're in planes. You're, you know, crashing. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about James Bond.
You're up
it's
in the
fiction.
moon. You're in the moon.
Yeah.
You're getting swallowed by the big capsule.
So the big spaceship.
Well, the part I like is the beginning when he pretends to be Peter Franks and comes up to her room and she walks in. What does she do? She walks in as a blonde.
Yeah.
And when she says, wait, I'll slip into something more comfortable, within 30 seconds she comes out and she's a redhead.
Yeah.
And she gets him to have a drink just for the purposes of getting his thumbprint, right? To do a fingerprint check on him.
Yeah.
Another great gadget.
Guten Abend. Good evening. Bitte?
You are English?
Yes, I'm English.
I speak English. Who is your floor?
3, please.
She had a fingerprint reader,
and she was so much more capable in the beginning of that movie than at the end. You know? That little cassette that she took out, Bond had already switched it, and then she undid what he did. So.
He saved the world, and she unsaved the world. He said, "We better get out of here."
Yeah, and that's the other thing you could always count on in pretty much every Bond movie. In the last 10 minutes, everything's blowing up. Everything's blowing up. There's not going to be anything left standing wherever he is. The whole place is coming down. Whether it's Casino Royale, where Venice basically comes all down. Actually, Goldfinger's an exception to that, but pretty much the only exception. They couldn't blow up Fort Knox.
No.
I'm sorry, but James Bond can't be a girl. 007 can't be a girl.
Thank you. 008 can be a girl.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you expect me to talk, Goldfinger? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
The first time you see James Bond, ever. Everything he did was cool.
Yep. Bond. James Bond.
I admire your courage, Miss...
Trench. Sylvia Trench. I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Why are you laughing?
Well, at least we have the laugh to add at the end.
Right. We've gone from 12 handicaps at this to 19 handicaps in just a week.
That's what happened. Somebody changed my grip, and the next thing you know, I can't do the podcast anymore. I felt like I was in the first row of the first pew at church, right during the sermon.
And your brother was poking you.
My brother was making me laugh.
Thanks for joining us today.
Billy Harmon.
We really appreciate your
Double
feedback.
Indemnity.
And please subscribe to the
Two
show.
outer.
Hit them
Odd
hard
Job.
and hit them off.
That's 36 holes.